welcome to NTD China News. I'm Karen Chang. Making headlines this Wednesday, January 9th. Xilai moves a step closer to trial. The fight over censorship spreads to Beijing. And why China's control of information is a global risk. Chinese state media announced today that the case of former Chongqing party chief Xilai is going to court. The statement said he has been, quote, transferred to judicial organs. The statement did not say when the trial will take place, but many believe it will be before the next National People's Congress in March. That's when retiring Chinese leaders Hu Jintao and Wen Jiabao will step down from their government positions. Chinese media did not list Xilai's offenses, only that he committed serious law violations. In September, Xinhua news agency said he had been detained on accusations of taking bribes, abuse of power, improper sexual relations, and nepotism. He may also be charged with involvement in the case of his wife Gu Kailai and the murder of British businessman Neil Haywood. Aside from the official accusations, Xilai has been identified as one of the main persons involved in the Chinese regime's persecution of the Falun Gong spiritual practice. That crackdown was launched in 1999 by former Chinese leader Jiang Zemin, who was a political ally of Xilai. It's been more than a week since the fight for press freedom began in southern China. Today, there are reports a senior Chinese official has stepped in a bid to diffuse the situation.
Staff at Guangdong-based Southern Weekly have reportedly agreed to get back to work, and the paper's Thursday edition will be printed as usual. This comes after reports that a high-level Chinese official intervened to defuse the standoff.
If the Southern Weekly incident is allowed to continue, the incident will snowball, and in the words of the regime, it will turn into a political incident. So right now, their only choices are to crack down or reach a compromise.
According to Reuters, Guangdong's new provincial party chief Hu Chunhua helped to broker a solution on Tuesday evening. Under the agreement, reporters would end their strike. In return, they would not be punished for staging a rare public protest against local propaganda authorities. The details of the agreement are vague. It's also yet to be officially announced. Chief editor of US-based China Affairs magazine Wu Fan has reservations about this outcome.
Promises from the Communist Party cannot be trusted. History has taught us this lesson too many times. They can say it's white today, and tomorrow it'll be black. Whether or not they'll go after the reporters in the future remains to be seen.
The anti-censorship debate began after New Year's Day. Southern Weekly intended to run an editorial asking for a constitutionalized government. But without the paper's knowledge, Guangdong's propaganda chief Tuo Zhen rewrote the piece into a tribute to the Communist Party. The move angered editors at Southern Weekly. The paper's supporters criticized the government's blatant interference in its publication procedure. The incident also led to an uproar online, with several high-profile academics, media workers, and celebrities voicing support for Southern Weekly.
A deal may have been reached in Guangdong to settle down the protest there over censorship, but not before the heated debate moved up north to Beijing. Staff at the Beijing News staged a failed attempt to resist orders to print a harsh pro-censorship article. Here's a look at what happened there.
The anti-censorship fight began in southern China. Now it appears to have reached the other side of the country, in Beijing. Dai Zigeng, the publisher of Beijing News, reportedly resigned early Wednesday morning. The paper was forced to print an editorial by state-run Global Times. The article criticized the rising support for staff at Southern Weekly in their fight against censorship. These pictures posted on Chinese internet show a somber newsroom at Beijing News on Tuesday evening. Some of the staff here were reduced to tears after Beijing propaganda officials reportedly threatened to close the paper if they didn't comply with the print orders. The paper gave in, and that's when Dai Zigeng verbally gave his resignation. It is unclear whether the resignation was accepted. Beijing News is a well-respected paper in China's capital city. It's partly owned by the Southern Media Group, which also prints Southern Weekly. In 2011, Beijing's propaganda authorities took control of Beijing News and another paper, the Beijing Times. At the time, it was seen as a move to shorten the tether of the media outlets. Beijing News boldly covered a deadly train crash that July, directing public anger at mismanagement by railway officials. As for that Global Times editorial, it appeared on the Wednesday edition of Beijing Times, tucked away in a corner, buried inside the paper on page 20.
The Chinese regime's tight control over information isn't just a domestic matter. An international political risk consulting firm says this control will be one of the top risks of 2013. The Eurasia Group believes that with more and more mainland users finding ways to voice their opinions and corruption online, Chinese leaders will have a big challenge if they want to control the voice of people on the web.
International political risk consulting firm Eurasia Group has just published a report entitled The Top Risks of 2013. In second place is China's control of information. The report says the majority of the Chinese middle class has increased its need for the free flow of information online more than ever. In the past, China's Great Internet Firewall was used to control what content appeared in the mainland, but people are now finding ways to get around it, make their voices loud and clear, especially in cases of official corruption. Every bit of news about some corrupt official in China is being discussed by everyday people nationwide, and the government is losing the battle to be the voice of authority on the internet. The report says, quote, "The leadership is unaccustomed to seeing its dirty laundry online and completely unprepared for the public accountability this new trend demands."
As long as it's insiders breaking the news on the internet, it becomes a public event. There are sensitive issues leaking, like the environmental pollution in Chunhua. Officials tried their best to control the news. After 5 days, the media had to disclose the incident. The CCP's ability to control information is getting weaker.
Eurasia Group President Ian Bremer says it's likely we will see Chinese authorities use nationalism as a rallying cry against corruption and conflicts in the East and South China Seas. Freelance writer Liu Yiming agrees.
Nationalism can distract the Chinese people, but not completely. We're not at war, and there are only small conflicts with foreign countries. Domestic issues are much more obvious, and they bring negative public attention onto the CCP.
The report says for the Chinese Communist Party to take hold of the internet once again, it must become the, quote, loudest voice online. But the report believes it will be none too easy to achieve. The other threats in the report include risky emerging markets, the possibility of an Arab summer, Washington politics, Europe, and Iran.
And coming up after the break, did U.S. trade policy towards China lead to domestic job losses? A letter from inside a Chinese labor camp found in the U.S. isn't the first of its kind. And a gift from ancient China as Shen Yun performs at Atlanta, Georgia. Welcome back. For over a decade, multinational companies have relocated some or all of their manufacturing to China, taking advantage of the low-cost labor and more relaxed regulatory control. The flip side of that is job losses in their home country. A study recently published has found that a trade policy set in 2000 by the US government may have encouraged US businesses to move to China.
A study suggests US policy could have sent jobs to China. Written by Justin Pierce of the Federal Reserve and Peter Schott of the Yale School of Business, this draft of the study connects the U.S.-China trade relationship to the loss of U.S. manufacturing jobs. According to the researchers, this was a result of giving China the status of a permanent normalized trade relationship, or PNTR, in 2000. Pierce and Schott argue the status officially ended, quote, policy uncertainty to our detriment. Before 2000, the threat of tariffs caused manufacturers to stay out of China because they were uncertain whether tariffs would cost them too much. But after PNTR, this threat subsided, and companies moved their jobs to China, where they benefited from low-cost labor. Pierce and Schott say without China's PNTR, jobs in the U.S. manufacturing sector could have risen by 10% by 2007. Instead, they declined by 15%. Contention with China's PNTR is not new. In February of 2005, Representative Bernie Sanders led the latest attempt to repeal the status, also concerned for U.S. job loss.
China's labor camp system has been under the spotlight recently, particularly after a woman in the U.S. found a letter claiming to be from someone inside a Chinese labor camp calling for help. NTD has received information that the letter is not the first of its kind, and former detainees in China have also tried to do the same thing to raise awareness for their plight.
A letter recently found inside a box of Halloween decorations in the United States exposed some of the abuses that go on in Chinese labor camps. But these claims are not new. In fact, similar letters surfaced in Europe as early as 10 years ago. Wang Yong, the head of the Austrian Falun Dafa Association, says in October 2002, an Austrian man discovered a letter from Guangzhou's Chatua women's labor camp. It was hidden inside a napkin holder.
When I saw the letter, I felt very heavy. All of a sudden, the distance between Austria and China disappeared. I felt exactly how terrible it is to be persecuted inside China.
Falun Dafa, also known as Falun Gong, is a Chinese meditation practice. It's been persecuted by the Chinese regime since 1999. The letter details the torture of detained adherents, aimed at forcing them to give up the practice. The napkin holder from Austria was sold by a local company called Edusho.
Amnesty International investigated and found that Edusho's parent company in Germany, Chibo, also found letters calling for help from Falun Gong practitioners detained in Chinese prisons.
A former inmate from that same Guangzhou labor camp said she had written a similar letter when she was held there for 2 years.
10 years ago, I was illegally detained because I practiced Falun Gong. I wrote a letter calling for help and put it inside a product I made during forced labor. I hoped the international community could help. 10 years later, this illegal detention of Falun Gong adherents is still going on. I feel really upset over this.
In its 2007 Human Rights Report on China, the U.S. State Department cited estimations that of China's 250,000 labor camps inmates, half are Falun Gong practitioners. Aside from claims of torture and slave labor, there are allegations the Chinese regime has killed Falun Gong adherents for their organs. In October 2012, 106 U.S. Congress members signed a Dear Colleague letter to Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. The letter appeals to the State Department to release any information it has on the claims of forced organ harvesting.
A metro train derailed in the southwestern Chinese city of Kunming in Yunnan province on Tuesday while undergoing a test run. According to Xinhua news agency, the driver was killed and another person was injured in the incident. As China seeks to rapidly expand its subway rail system in cities, safety issues are becoming a concern. 2 other accidents in the past few weeks have been reported in Nanjing and Shanghai. Last week, a tunnel of a metro line under construction collapsed in Nanjing, leaving 3 workers injured. On December 31st, a rail platform in construction collapsed into a parking lot in Shanghai, killing 5 workers and injuring 18. Construction experts say China is focused on railway construction at a faster pace and often neglects safety issues. According to railway analyst Paul Gong, China plans to expand subway systems in 38 cities. China is expected to have 2,900 miles of rail system by the end of 2015 and more than 5,400 miles by the end of 2020. And that's all for this broadcast of NTD China News. For more on China-related topics, visit our website at ntd.tv or subscribe to our YouTube channel, NTD on China, where you'll find all of NTD's China content. Coming up next is a segment of the 9 commentaries of the Communist Party. Stay tuned.